I never thought I'd marry someone for money, let alone a guy the first barely knew. But life has a way of flipping you inside out when you're broke enough to consider Craigslist a solution. The ad was simple. Gay man seeking fake husband for green card. Serious inquiries only. Will pay monthly. No closeness, no strings, just paperwork and appearances. I stared at it for a long time. My checking account had $82.47 in it. My landlord was already making veiled threats about next steps, and I just maxed out a third credit card buying groceries and gas. So yeah, I responded. His name was Lucas. Brazilian, tall, lean, early 30s, with a tired voice over the phone that said he'd done this interview a few too many times already. He offered to meet the next day at a coffee shop in Queens, said he'd buy the latte if I brought a pen. When I showed up, he was already there, reading over a folder of documents like someone preparing for court. He looked nice. In that clean, understated, I showered and wore actual pants for this kind of way. "You're Dylan?" he asked. I nodded. "That's me." He motioned to the seat across from him. "You're late." "Traffic." "You live 3 stops away." I blinked. "How do you put your address in the email." "Right? Not creepy at all." He sighed, like he was already regretting this. "Okay. Ground rules. We get married in 2 weeks. You move in with me. You learn everything about me. My job, my family, my favorite food, the whole works. I'll pay you monthly, in cash. No receipts, no records. You don't tell anyone. If we get caught, we both go down." "Sounds romantic." He didn't laugh. "This is serious." I nodded, trying to match his tone. "So what's in it for me again?" $1,500 a month. I did the math in my head. That would cover rent, food, and give me just enough space to maybe start paying off my debt. "You're not going to ask me anything?" he said. "What do you mean?" "Like why I'm doing this, why I need a green card, who I am." I shrugged. "Figured I'd find out when I moved in." He stared at me for a second. Then, for the first time since I sat down, he smiled. Just barely, the corner of his mouth twitching like he hadn't smiled in a while. "You're either desperate or stupid," he said. "Both," I replied. And, just like that, it began. 2 weeks later, we stood in front of a board officiant in a tiny civil hall in Brooklyn. We signed the papers. We smiled for the one mandatory photo. We were legally married in less time than it took to make a sandwich. No kiss. No vows. Just a handshake afterward and a casual, "Guess I'm yours now." Moving in with Lucas was weird. His apartment was neat. Too neat. Like he arranged his books by color and ironed his pillowcases. I had 3 mugs that doubled as bowls and used my laundry basket as a dresser. We tried to learn each other. We traded facts like we were cramming for a test. His mom's name was Mariana. He worked freelance in interior design. He had a younger sister in Rio. He hated ketchup, loved indie films, and had once broken his wrist trying to impress a guy on a rental scooter. I told him I was a barista/failed photographer, allergic to cats, terrible at cooking, and once cried watching an animated Pixar short in public. It was awkward and strange, but we managed. Until the letter came. Notice of scheduled interview. I-130, adjustment of status. Please appear for a joint marriage interview. Suddenly, we weren't 2 strangers playing house anymore. We were on a deadline. A real one. The day of the interview, Lucas wore a blue button-down and actually asked me how he looked. I said, like someone pretending to be married, which got me a rare laugh. But the closer we got to the USCIS building, the quieter we both got. And when they called us into separate rooms, that's when the panic really hit. Because I realized something. For all the facts we'd memorized, I didn't know him. Not really. Not like someone should know their husband. They took me into a room that looked more like a DMV interrogation chamber than anything else. Off-white walls, flickering fluorescent light, 1 table, 2 chairs. No windows. Just a government-issued air of suspicion. The woman across from me had glasses perched at the tip of her nose and a voice like dry toast. State your full name. Dylan Harper. And your husband's? Lucas Moreira. She nodded without looking at me, clicked her pen. How did you two meet? My mouth opened, but the words didn't come right away. My brain scrambled to rewind through all the prep Lucas and I had done the night before, flashcards and takeout, and YouTube videos of mock interviews. Through mutual friends, I finally said, trying to sound casual. Which friends? Shit. A guy the first used to work with, Tyler. He was dating one of Lucas's friends. And that friend's name? I hesitated. Lucas had said something about a Sophia. Or maybe it was Sonia? Sophia, I guessed. The woman paused just long enough to make me sweat. Last name? I looked at her blankly. She gave the tiniest of smirks. Not friendly, not warm, just the kind of expression someone wears when they're adding a red flag to your file. How long did you date before getting married? 7 months. And where was your first trip together? Another pause. Lucas and I never traveled together, not really. But we had talked about one of his exes taking him to Fire Island. Maybe I could spin it? Fire Island, I said. Last summer. Where did you stay? A small rental, near the dunes. She finally looked up at me. What color are the walls in your living room? My stomach dropped. I blinked. My mind tried to summon the mental image of Lucas's apartment. We mostly hung out in the kitchen, or the bedroom when I stayed over. Do we even have a living room? White, I said, too quickly. Are there any decorations? A mirror, and some kind of painting. Abstract. She tapped her pen against the paper. What side of the bed do you sleep on? I breathed out. Left. What's Lucas's favorite breakfast? Coffee. And toast with... Toast with what? I blanked again. Avocado? More tapping. The rest of the questions kept coming, and I kept fumbling through them. I tried to act confident, like I had nothing to hide, but my palms were sweating, and I could tell she was seeing straight through me. By the end of the interview, I felt like I'd just taken an exam for a class I'd never attended. Wait outside, she said, already calling for the next person. I stumbled back into the waiting area, heart thudding. Lucas was still inside. His name hadn't been called yet. That meant we'd been split up on purpose. And that meant they didn't buy it. I sank into the hard plastic seat and stared at the beige wall in front of me, replaying every stupid answer I'd given. Why had I said Fire Island? Why did I guess white? What if the walls were beige or gray or taupe or some fancy designer word Lucas would have used? 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. When Lucas finally came out, his face was unreadable. He didn't look at me. Not right away. We left the building in silence, walking side by side down the stairs and into the cold, late winter air. It had started to snow, big, lazy flakes that settled on Lucas's shoulders like he didn't even notice. Once we were out of earshot, he finally turned to me. How'd it go? I shrugged, trying not to sound defeated. Fine. You? Fine. More silence. The wind picked up, cutting through my jacket like paper. Lucas stopped walking and looked at me, his face tight. What did you say for how we met? Tyler. Your friend Sophia. He shook his head. It was Sonia. Fuck. Yeah. We stood there in the middle of the sidewalk while couples in puffed-up coats hurried past us, laughing or bickering or holding hands like people who actually belonged together. I said the walls were beige, he added. I said white. Lucas exhaled hard and turned his face toward the sky. We should have practiced more. I thought we were good, I muttered. So did I. We fell quiet again. Then Lucas glanced at me sideways. What side of the bed did you say you sleep on? Left. Me too. I let out a dry laugh, but it didn't feel funny. It felt like we were crashing. Like a plane we both built with duct tape and ambition, and now we were bracing for impact. We might get flagged, he said, his voice lower now. Meaning? Meaning they could open an investigation, pop-ins, more interviews, or deny the application entirely. The snow was starting to collect in his hair. I should have said something. Should have brushed it off, or told him it looked good, or made a joke. But I didn't. I just stared at him. He looked tired. Not just today tired, but life tired. Like someone who's been holding it together for too long. "You think they'll catch us?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think we need to actually know each other." I blinked. "We do." "No, Dylan, we know facts, like we're trying to win some game show, but that's not the same as knowing each other." Something about the way he said my name made my chest feel tight. "We have to fix this," he continued. "Because I'm not getting deported. That's not an option." I nodded, slow. "So what do we do?" He looked at me for a long second, then said, "We start over." Starting over turned out to be a lot more awkward than I expected. We sat across from each other on the living room floor that night. Yes, beige walls, not white, as I'd guessed, with takeout containers between us, and a stack of flashcards Lucas had made, like we were studying for the SATs of domesticity. He held one up. "What's my favorite breakfast?" "Avocado toast." "Black coffee." He tilted his head. "Wrong." My stomach sank. "Seriously? I hate avocado." "You made that up. Because you look like someone who eats avocado toast." "Well, I don't. I like banana and peanut butter toast. Protein." I groaned and flopped backward onto the rug. "We're so screwed." Lucas laughed. "A real one this time, not the fake married one we use for photo ops." It caught me off guard. "You know," he said, "we don't have to make it so robotic. We could actually talk, like real people, just say things about ourselves." "You mean like a normal conversation?" "Exactly, imagine that." So we put the flashcards away. I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge. We stayed on the rug like 2 guys who weren't pretending, who weren't lying to the government, who weren't in way over their heads, and we just talked. Lucas told me he came to the US 6 years ago on a student visa, that he studied design at Pratt, interned for some high-end firm, but then the work visa didn't come through the way he'd hoped. His options were drying up. He had a few months left before he'd have to go back. "I love New York," he said, tracing the rim of his bottle with his thumb. "Even the smell, the piss and pizza combo." I laughed. "That's disturbing." He smiled faintly. "I don't want to leave. I've built something here." "What about your family?" "They know. They think I married you because I fell in love." My eyebrows shot up. "And what did you tell them?" He looked at me evenly. "The same thing." That shut me up. I didn't know what to do with that, whether he was joking or if it was just something he said to shut them up. Either way, it landed like a punch to the ribs, so I changed the subject. I told him about my failed photography dreams, how I'd once thought I'd shoot magazine covers or band tours. I told him about how my dad left when I was 10, and how my mom never really bounced back from it. About working double shifts at the cafe to stay afloat. "I didn't expect to be 28 and broke," I said, "let alone married to a guy the first barely knew." Lucas leaned back on his hands, looking at me. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. I thought you'd be more transactional, colder, like the others." I sat up straighter. "There were others?" He hesitated. "A few. Tried to do it the normal way. It didn't work." "What happened?" "They took the money, ghosted, or got cold feet, or asked for more and more until I couldn't afford it." I stared at him. "Why didn't you just marry someone you were dating?" He smiled without humor. "I haven't dated anyone in 2 years. Not seriously. And if I'm being honest, I stopped trusting people a long time ago." That hit me in a place I wasn't ready for, because I got it. The fear. The way it hardens you over time. How you start building walls out of survival, not spite. "Guess we're both a little messed up," I said. Lucas nodded. "Yeah, but at least we're legally bound now." I chuckled, and he leaned over to bump his shoulder into mine, and for a second, it felt like we weren't faking it. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Not overnight, but slowly, Lucas started leaving little sticky notes on the fridge. Good luck at work, or your coffee's in the microwave. I started remembering his coffee order without asking. We'd cook together. And by cook, I mean he cooked while I chopped things badly and made dumb jokes until he smacked me with a kitchen towel. We stopped sitting on opposite ends of the couch. We started falling asleep on the same side of the bed. One night, he handed me his phone and said, "Here, scroll through my pics, just so you can describe my family if they ask again." I ended up lying on his chest, thumbing through blurry selfies with his sister, old graduation photos, one of him in a swimsuit on some Brazilian beach. "You look different back then," I said. He peered down at me. "Better or worse?" I smirked. "Different." We lay there in silence, the kind that felt safe. And that's when it hit me. This thing we were doing, it wasn't fake anymore. Not all of it. Something was blurring. Lines, boundaries, reasons, and I wasn't sure how much of it was mine to want. Then came the letter. USCIS has scheduled a home visit to verify your marriage. You will be contacted 48 hours in advance. Non-compliance may result in denial. Lucas read it first, then handed it to me in silence. My heart dropped. "Shit," I said. He nodded. "Are we ready for this?" Lucas looked at me for a long second. "We'd better be." They called on a Tuesday morning. The visit was scheduled for Thursday at 9 a.m. 2 days, Lucas said, pacing the living room like a man preparing for battle. "That's all we've got to make this place look like we're a real couple. Like we live here, sleep here, fight here." I was still in sweatpants, clutching my half-drunk coffee like it could defend me from the impending doom. "You mean we don't already?" He stopped pacing and looked at me. "Be serious." "I am serious. We've been living together for almost 3 months. We know each other now, don't we?" Lucas rubbed his forehead. "It's not about knowing each other. It's about them believing we do." And that was the key difference. It didn't matter how many nights we'd fallen asleep next to each other, how many times I'd watched him cook or caught him dancing in the kitchen to bossa nova playlists. If the agent saw one off detail, a toothbrush in the wrong drawer, mismatched paperwork, inconsistent answers, we were toast. So we got to work. We printed out fake anniversary cards and scattered them around, added my name to a couple of utility bills, even though I'd been giving him cash under the table. I moved my clothes from the spare closet into his. We put photos in frames, ones we'd taken recently, which I edited in Lightroom to make it look like they were from last fall. We even argued about which side of the bed we sleep on, just loud enough for the upstairs neighbor to hear. Lucas said it helped, quote, build credibility. By the time Wednesday night rolled around, the place looked like a gay home goods commercial. Candles, cozy throws, matching coffee mugs. We sat on the couch afterward, exhausted and wired, both of us sipping cheap red wine like it was our last meal. "This is ridiculous," I muttered. "You know that, right?" Lucas glanced over at me. "The whole system is," I studied him. The curve of his jaw, the faint worry lines between his brows. "What happens if this goes south?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at his wine. "Then I get deported," he finally said. "I lose everything. I go back to a country that doesn't want me. I start over again from scratch." I felt a heaviness settle in my chest. "And what happens to me?" I asked. He looked at me, really looked at me. "You get off the hook. No record, no charges, no more husband." It shouldn't have stung, but it did. That night, we shared the bed like always. But it felt different, tighter, quieter. Lucas lay on his back, hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. "You scared?" I asked. He didn't move. Terrified. Same. I rolled onto my side, facing him in the dark, his silhouette barely visible. "You remember the story we made up about how we met?" I asked. He chuckled softly. "Yeah, the art exhibit. You said I spilled wine on your shirt. Your aim was terrible." I smiled. "What would have happened if that had been real?" Lucas didn't answer at first. Then he said, "I would have asked you out." Something about the quiet confidence in his voice made my pulse spike. I swallowed. Even if it wasn't part of some immigration scam? Especially if it wasn't. My heart felt too big for my chest. "Me too," I said. A long pause. Then Lucas reached over under the covers and took my hand. We fell asleep like that, fingers intertwined, not rehearsed, not practiced, just there. They showed up right on time. 2 agents, 1 man, 1 woman. Clipboards, badges, polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Mr. Morera, Mr. Harper," the woman said, shaking both our hands. "We're just here to verify some information, get a sense of your day-to-day. Nothing intrusive." Lucas offered them coffee. I sat rigid on the couch like I'd swallowed a broomstick. They looked at photos, checked mail, peeked into our shared closet, asked basic questions. How we met, where we vacationed, who cooks more. We answered in sync, almost too well. At one point, Lucas slipped and said he hated avocados. I almost laughed. Then came the curveball. "Can we speak to you separately for a moment, Mr. Harper?" My throat went dry. "Sure." They took me into the bedroom and closed the door. The questions came fast. Personal. Intimate. Stuff I hadn't prepared for. "What's the last thing Lucas said to you before bed last night?" I froze. "He said he was scared." The agent wrote something down. "What side of the bed does he sleep on?" "Right." "Does he snore?" "No, but he talks sometimes." "What about?" I blinked. "He said something in Portuguese once." I asked what it meant the next morning. He said it was nothing. "What did he say?" I hesitated, then gave my best guess at the pronunciation. "Saudade." The agent's pen paused mid-sentence. He looked at me. "Do you know what that means?" "Not exactly," I admitted, but I looked it up after. It means something like longing. Missing something that doesn't really exist anymore. He didn't smile, just nodded, wrote something, and stood. "That'll be all." I walked out feeling like I'd just stepped off a roller coaster. Lucas was already standing, pale, tense. The agents thanked us and said they'd follow up within a few weeks. And then they were gone. Lucas shut the door slowly, then leaned against it, his shoulders sagging. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded once. "I think so." I crossed the room and stood in front of him. "We did it." He looked at me. Not like a stranger, not like a business partner, but like someone seeing me clearly for the first time. "Yeah," he said, "we really did." And then, before I could overthink it, I leaned in, and he kissed me, not because we had to, not because someone might be watching, but because I wanted to. And maybe, just maybe, he did too. I didn't expect the kiss to mean anything. I mean, sure, it felt good. Really good, actually. Like the kind of kiss you think about days later while doing the dishes or walking to work. But I told myself it was just adrenaline. Relief. That weird post-stress high you get when the danger's past and you suddenly realize you're still standing. But it wasn't just that. Because after the kiss, Lucas didn't pull away. He didn't crack a joke or pretend it hadn't happened. He didn't give me the cold shoulder or turn into the distant version of himself I used to live with at the beginning. He stayed right there, forehead pressed against mine, breathing a little too fast. "I've been wanting to do that," he murmured. "How long?" I asked. He smiled, soft and crooked. "Since week 2. I laughed, because, honestly, same. That moment could have changed everything right away. But life doesn't always work like that. You don't just kiss and suddenly figure out your relationship. Especially when your entire bond started as a transaction wrapped in a lie. So yeah, things got weird after. Not in a bad way, exactly, but in that slow, tiptoeing around it way. We still lived together, still cooked dinner and watched dumb shows, and argued about whether almond milk counts as a real beverage. But now there were these pauses, these looks, These moments where our shoulders brushed and neither of us moved away. And then there were the nights, the ones where we'd both get ready for bed in silence, brushing teeth shoulder to shoulder, climbing into bed with a little more tension than before. We'd lie there, backs turned, both too aware of the space between us. Then one night the space disappeared. I had a nightmare. Something stupid, probably stress-related, and I woke up breathing hard, covered in sweat. Lucas stirred beside me and mumbled, "You okay?" "Yeah." I lied. He didn't say anything at first, then he reached over and touched my arm. "Come here." I hesitated. "Please," he said. So I moved closer, pressed my forehead against his chest, felt his arms slide around me like they'd been waiting for that permission all along. We didn't talk about it in the morning. But after that, it became normal. Sharing space, sharing breath, sharing heat that wasn't just physical. A week passed. Then another. No word from immigration. We tried not to think about it, but it hovered over everything like bad weather on the horizon. And the thing is, the longer we waited, the less I cared about the outcome. Not because it didn't matter. It mattered a lot. But because somewhere along the line, this stopped being just about paperwork. I didn't want Lucas to stay just because he paid me. I wanted him to stay because I wasn't ready to not have him in my life. The realization hit me one night when we were doing absolutely nothing. Just folding laundry on the bed, both of us in sweats, half watching a cooking show on mute. He was folding a pair of my socks wrong. I didn't say anything. Then he held one up, looked at it, and said, "These yours or mine?" "Yours," I said, even though they were definitely mine. He smirked. Liar. And in that moment, I wanted to tell him everything. That I didn't want the green card to be the only reason he was here. That I didn't care about the money anymore. That if he left, if this all fell apart, it would gut me in a way I wasn't prepared for. But I didn't say any of it, because if I did, it might ruin what we had. And I was too afraid to risk it. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Same agent as before. I was at the coffee shop on my break when I saw the number flash on my screen. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Harper," the woman said. "Just calling to confirm that Mr. Morera's adjustment of status has been approved." I froze. "Wait, what?" "You passed the interview. The case is closed. You'll receive confirmation documents in the mail." I blinked. "That's it?" "That's it." I hung up and just stared at my phone for a full minute, like it might call back and say, "Just kidding." Then I texted Lucas. "It's done. You got it." He replied 30 seconds later, "Come home." When I walked through the door, he was already waiting. He didn't say anything at first, just came over and wrapped his arms around me in a way that was too intense for someone who'd just won a legal battle. His hands gripped the back of my hoodie like he thought I might disappear. And for once, I didn't make a joke. I just held on. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were glassy. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You already did." He looked down. "I guess this means you're off the hook now." It felt like a stab. "Yeah," I said. "Guess so." He didn't say anything, so I added, "Unless you don't want to be." His eyes snapped up to meet mine. "What do you mean?" I stepped back, just enough to look him in the face. "I mean, we started this because you needed a husband on paper, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being just about the paper, at least for me." He didn't blink. I went on. "I don't want you to stay just because you have to. But if there's any part of you that wants to stay because of me," I trailed off. Then he did the thing I'd been hoping for since the first time he said my name. He kissed me. Not the cautious, testing kind. The real kind. The kind that tells you everything you need to know. When he pulled back, he whispered, "It stopped being fake for me a long time ago." You'd think after something like that, after a confession like his, after a kiss that honest, things would fall into place. That we'd drop the charade completely and step into something real, something clear. But it's not that simple. Love, whatever version of it we were stepping toward, doesn't cleanly replace a lie. It lingers with it, intertwines, messes with your head. We were still married, technically, still living under the same roof, using the same mugs, sharing a bed. But the rules had changed. There was no contract holding us there now, no legal deadline, no interviews, no money changing hands. If we stayed close, it was because we chose to, and that made it scarier than ever. "What do we do now?" I asked one night, curled up on the couch with Lucas beside me, his hand on my knee like it had always belonged there. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I don't know. "Whatever we want," I turned to him. "You don't miss it? The clarity? The roles?" He raised an eyebrow. "You miss being fake married?" "No," I said. "But at least when it was fake, I knew what I was supposed to be." Lucas was silent again. Then he reached up, brushed his thumb across my cheek. "You don't have to be anything, Dylan. You're already enough." The sincerity in his voice undid me. I looked away, because looking at him too long made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't used to. "I want to date you," he said suddenly. I blinked. "We're literally married." "Exactly. We skipped all the fun stuff." I laughed, caught off guard. "You want to go back to the beginning?" He grinned. "Start over. Do it right this time." I nodded. "Okay. First date?" "Tomorrow," he said. "No pressure. Just two guys, seeing if they like each other." We both smiled. And I don't know why, but that terrified me more than any government interview ever had. The date was simple. Coffee in the West Village, followed by wandering into a bookstore that smelled like old paper and comfort. He bought a book on interior architecture. I picked up a dog-eared copy of a poetry collection I'd pretended to read in college. We didn't hold hands, didn't kiss in public, just talked, laughed. Like we were rediscovering each other outside of our living room. At one point, we ended up sitting on a bench in Washington Square Park, sipping espresso and watching people walk their dogs. "Did you ever think we'd make it here?" Lucas asked. "No," I admitted. "I thought you'd ditch me the second your visa was approved." He turned toward me. "I thought you'd ask me to leave the day after we got the letter. Why didn't you?" He gave a half shrug, but his eyes stayed on mine. "Because leaving you didn't feel like an option." I looked down at my cup. "That scares me." I know. We didn't say much after that. But I reached over and let my hand brush against his. And he didn't move away. After that, everything slowed down. We kept dating, kept learning, kept peeling back layers that neither of us had bothered to explore when we were just faking it. Lucas showed me his old sketches, actual hand-drawn floor plans from his first year of school. He had talent, raw, meticulous, emotional. I told him I hadn't picked up my camera in almost a year, and he surprised me by buying me a secondhand lens and leaving it on my desk with a note that said, "In case you forget what you're good at." I cried, silently, in the bathroom that night. And on the nights when neither of us could sleep, when the world outside felt too loud or too uncertain, we'd just lie there, forehead to forehead, sharing quiet breath and unspoken truths. It wasn't perfect. There were fights about space, about what we were, about who was more afraid. But we worked through them. Because the difference between pretending and choosing is that when you choose someone, you stay, even when it's hard. 3 months after the approval, we got an envelope in the mail. Lucas opened it at the kitchen table while I stood by the stove, flipping pancakes and boxers and a t-shirt that may or may not have once been his. "It's official," he said. "What is?" He held up the letter. "The green card. It's been mailed. Should arrive this week." I turned off the stove and sat across from him. The moment was huge. It should have felt like a celebration. But instead, we just sat there, quiet. "Does this change anything?" I asked. He looked at me. "Does it need to?" "I don't know. We're not doing this for the visa anymore. Not for the money. There's nothing keeping us here except each other," he said. I nodded. "Is that enough?" He reached across the table and took my hand. "It is for me." Later that night, after dinner and too much wine, Lucas pulled me onto the couch. "Marry me," he said. I blinked. "We already did that." "No," he said. "I mean really. For real this time. Not for documents, Not for rent, not because we had to, just because I want to. I stared at him. You're serious? He nodded. I want the wedding, the friends, the dancing. I want to wear a stupid suit and say vows that actually mean something. I want to wake up next to you every day and know you stayed because you chose to. I was quiet for a long time. Then I said the only thing that felt right. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. We didn't rush it. There was no need. We were already married in the eyes of the government, already living together, already sharing a life that had started as fiction and somehow grown roots. But this time, it wasn't about paperwork. This time, we were writing something real. The wedding wasn't extravagant. Neither of us wanted that. Just 30 people in a garden behind our favorite cafe in Brooklyn. Friends, a few of Lucas's family who flew in from Brazil, and my mom, who had never really asked many questions, just hugged me hard when I told her the whole story. Lucas wore navy. I wore gray. We stood under strings of lights, surrounded by late spring air and the scent of fresh pastries from the cafe, Vi's kitchen. Our officiant was a friend of a friend. And our vows? We wrote them the night before, sitting on our living room floor, tipsy on cheap champagne and half sobbing, because we still couldn't believe how far we'd come. When it was my turn, I looked at Lucas and said, "You were never part of my plan, but you became my home anyway." His vows were simpler, more direct. "You changed my life," he said, voice steady. "And for once, I'm not scared to stay." We kissed. It wasn't like the first time, hesitant and unsure. It was the kind of kiss that ends a chapter, or starts a new one. I couldn't tell which, but I didn't need to. That night, we ended up back in our apartment, still in our suits, our shoes kicked off, sitting on the bed like it was any other evening. Except now, it wasn't about survival. It wasn't about pretending. It was about us. Lucas leaned back on the pillows, his tie loosened, cheeks flushed from wine and dancing. "Remember when we didn't even know each other's coffee orders?" I laughed, curling up beside him. "I remember thinking you were too serious, and I thought you were a mess." I raised an eyebrow. "I was a mess." He pulled me close. "And now?" "Now I'm just your mess." He smiled into my hair. Mine. We lay there like that, warm and tangled, the quiet between us comfortable in a way that only comes when you've earned it, when you've built it, piece by piece, from something that started with desperation and became something worth keeping. Sometimes, when people ask how we met, we still give the fake story. The art exhibit, the spilled wine, the chemistry. It's simpler, easier. But sometimes, when it's just the two of us in the kitchen, cooking barefoot or lying on the couch in silence while the city moves around us, I think about the truth, about the Craigslist ad, about the lies and the fear and the slow build toward something neither of us saw coming. And I think maybe the truth doesn't need to be clean. Maybe it just needs to be ours.